Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to see you all here. Prime Minister Erdogan, distinguished guests, colleagues, students, and visitors to campus, I am pleased to welcome you to Princeton University. Thank you for joining us on this very important occasion. My name is Christina Paxson, and I'm Dean of Princeton's Woodrow Wilson School of Public and International Affairs, the sponsor of today's speech by the Prime Minister. Before I introduce Princeton President Shirley Tillman, who will introduce the Prime Minister, I would like to say just a few words about the Woodrow Wilson School. Founded in 1930, the school is a major center of education and scholarship in public and international affairs. Our faculty and our fellows conduct world-class research and produce knowledge on which sound public policy is based. In the Woodrow Wilson School, alumni are leaders in the public, nonprofit, and private sectors in the U.S. and abroad. Our students are especially fortunate to hear from Prime Minister Erdogan, given Turkey's leadership role in the upcoming G20 summit, and in light of the diverse set of policy challenges our countries face together in the Mideast and also Europe as NATO allies. Now, as our time is limited, I will now introduce President Tillman. Shirley Tillman is president and also a professor of molecular biology at Princeton University. Specializing in the genetics of mammalian development, she was one of the architects of the effort to map the human genome. A member of Princeton's faculty since 1986, she was the founding director of the multidisciplinary Louis Sigler Institute for Integrative Genomics. She was named Princeton's 19th president in 2001, and in addition to her many accomplishments at Princeton, she has provided national leadership on issues relating to higher education, federal science policy, and women in science. President Tillman is a member of the National Academy of Sciences and chair of the Association of American Universities. She has received numerous honors, including the President's Award for Distinguished Teaching from Princeton and the L'Oreal UNESCO Prize for Women in Science. Again, welcome to campus, and please welcome to the podium President Tillman.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for joining us today as we welcome the Prime Minister of the Republic of Turkey and his distinguished delegation to our campus. Turkey occupies a critical place in the world, bridging as it does two continents, and not just geographically. It looks both east and west, and across the centuries, its history has been inextricably entwined with both the Christian and the Muslim worlds. Today, Turkey, which joined the North Atlantic Alliance in 1952, is both a key American ally and an increasingly influential regional power, with an important role to play in securing peace and prosperity along its borders, from Iraq to Georgia, a region beset by ethnic, religious, and political tensions. We are especially pleased and privileged, therefore, to have an opportunity to hear directly from the leader of Turkey's government, Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who has chosen as his topic, Building Global Peace, Turkish Regional Foreign Policy Priorities. Mr. Erdogan was born in Istanbul in 1954 and grew up in a family of modest means. A graduate of Marmara University, he was drawn to politics from an early age and has held leadership positions in a number of political parties. In 1994, he was elected mayor of Istanbul and was effective in addressing many of the city's chronic problems, from water shortages to pollution. The rough and tumble of Turkish politics, including a controversial prison sentence, did not deter him from founding a new political party, Justice and Development, in 2001, which he led to a landslide victory the following year. In 2003, Mr. Erdogan was named Prime Minister, and in national elections 4 years later, his party won an even larger percentage of the vote, reflecting his effective stewardship of the economy, his strong commitment to institutional reform and democratization, and his personal charisma. He has sought to build a more inclusive body politic, giving ordinary citizens, especially in rural areas, a greater voice in national affairs. In the words of the BBC, few critics would deny that Mr. Erdogan has presided over a government that has reformed and has modernized the country faster and more effectively than most of his predecessors. Our speaker has put his stamp on Turkish international relations, where neither historic animosities nor long-term friendships have prevented him from charting a course of his own, whether that has meant pursuing rapprochement with Armenia, Greece, and Syria, or taking Israel to task for its actions in the Gaza Strip. Little that Mr. Erdogan has done at home and abroad has gone unchallenged, but he has always managed to keep his footing, helped, no doubt, by his experience as a former professional soccer player. Whatever the immediate future holds for Turkey, it is clear from the past 6 years that our speaker will have a major hand in shaping it. Mr. Prime Minister, we are honored to have you with us, and to you and your visiting colleagues, I would like to extend the warmest of Princeton welcomes.
Saygıdeğer Rektör, saygıdeğer öğretim üyeleri, saygıdeğer öğrenciler, hanımefendiler, beyefendiler, öncelikle sizleri en kalbi duygularımla selamlıyorum. Tabii Princeton gibi dünyanın en seçkin üniversitelerinden birinde sizlerle bir araya gelmiş olmaktan duyduğum memnuniyeti öncelikle ifade etmek istiyorum. Bugün bu seçkin mekanda ve seçkin topluluk karşısında dünyamızın içinde bulunduğu büyük sorunların çözümüne yönelik
Distinguished Rector and distinguished members of the faculty, distinguished guests, I greet you all, and I would like to say that I'm very pleased to be with you and Princeton. I don't know if you can hear us. I'm very pleased to be with you in this very distinguished environment, distinguished participants. The problems, the global problems of our age require solutions at a global scale. We are confronted with quite a number of important problems such as wars, economic crisis, hunger, poverty, security of energy, terrorism, and climate change. These are all big challenges, problems that we have to resolve. But none of these problems are problems that we cannot solve. We need a new global order for the solution of these problems. And this global order should be an order which embraces everyone, which is just, based on sharing, which sees differences as a source of enrichment, and it should be an order which should be based on trust. We must move from the understanding of a world based solely on a perception of risk and threat to a global order which is based on solidarity and trust. More than that, the new global order, has become a necessity. And so we need a new understanding of leadership. I would like to say a few words about the basic principles of this new global order and the contributions that Turkey can make to this new order. We speak here of three basic principles, which are a world based on justice, pluralism, and trust and solidarity. The very first principal tenet of this new global order is the global political order. This political order is should be just, equitable, and participatory. We must understand world politics as a whole, and we must understand properly the dynamic relationship between different actors and developments. We have a number of intertwined relations. They should not be seen as a threat, but rather an opportunity. And at this juncture, global institutions such as the United Nations and other international organizations have an even bigger role to play. In fact, the efforts to reform international organizations such as the United Nations and the IMF have been in answer to exactly this kind of a need. Turkey successfully implements this politics based on embracing a politics which is just and inclusive in her region. Our policy of zero problems with our neighbors is the basis of our foreign policy with all of our neighbors. And in fact, when we first came to power, we had many problems with countries surrounding us. We had issues with countries in the north, in the south, in the east, and the west. And we had problems with almost all of our neighbors, so much so that the situation was at times threatening. And we said that our goal is not to make enemies, but to make friends. And that was why we wanted to establish this friendship. And for that reason, we, on the west side, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, we continued to develop our neighborly relations with them, and we kept moving forward in the south. We reorganized our efforts with Syria. Same thing with Iraq. Same thing with Iran. Same thing with Russia and the Caucasus, countries in the Caucasus. The Ukraine in the north. We have good relations with all of them now. At the moment, the Russian Federation is a leading trading partner for us. This is where we are in our relations. So, if one can remove prejudice and preconceptions, it is not so difficult at the end of the day to make friends, and the relations have come to a very positive point, and the problems in our region also have global consequences. Those are problems which are of interest to many countries around the world, and therefore the constructive and peaceful policies we implement in our region are important not just for us, but they have also been important in serving global peace, and we continue to work in these areas. We cannot consider, for example, the problems in the Middle East simply as problems being pertinent to the Middle East, or the problems between Israel and Palestine and other countries. Those cannot be seen as pertaining only to the region. When the problems between Palestine and Israel is resolved, we believe that many problems in the world may be resolved. This is the kind of process which we think would be initiated, triggered, and we as Turkey place a lot of importance on helping the solution of these problems. There are problems between Israel and Syria, and we have been involved in intermediation efforts which lasted for 5 rounds between Israel and Syria. But after the 5th round, there were events, as you know, in Gaza, and once that started our talks, the efforts in intermediation ended. But we're not without hope. We believe that the process can be reinitiated, provided that everybody can get involved. The second dimension of the new global order is global economic order. As you know, the global financial crisis has permeated into the real sector and the economy. And the effects of the crisis have been felt all over the world. What started in the US was not confined to the US. It affected the whole world. And countries have been affected by the crisis in different ways. Distinguished participants, I am very pleased to say that Turkey is one of the countries which has been least affected by this crisis. There has been a new process which has been initiated in way of reforming the global economic order as a result of this global financial crisis. And the rehabilitation of global financial institutions for a balanced and sustainable growth and development has become an urgent agenda item. And our main principle here is to reorganize the global economic order within a just and inclusive framework. Turkey is a member of the G20, and Turkey is one of the countries which has been supporting this reorganization effort. With the precautions measures we have taken in the banking and finance sector, the Turkish economy has a very strong and sound basis for growth. And throughout this crisis, we have not had any bankruptcies in our financial institutions. Previously, in the 1990s, and in 2001-2, in those years, Turkey has suffered greatly, and many banks went under, and they had to be taken over by the government. And we have taken our measures to make sure that we could face the crisis, and so far we have been moving in the right direction. Let me also say that Turkey's economic hinterland has a potential that goes beyond its GDP. From the Balkans to the Middle East to the Caucasus, the Black Sea and Central Asia, there is a vast economic geography which has a very important place in world economy, and that is in the proximity of Turkey, and that it makes Turkey one of the important actors in the world economy. The third pillar of the new global order is the global cultural order. The most important effects of globalization have shown themselves in the discussions of pluralism and multiculturalism. And today we see, instead of a single-dimensional discussion, a multi-dimensional discussion with great depth and a lot of efforts for peace. It's important to understand that cultural differences are a common value for humanity. We should see it as a source of richness. Turkey has a very rich history and cultural heritage, and it puts Turkey in an ideal position to contribute greatly to this effort. Turkey is between East and West, between Europe and the Islamic world, and it has history, historical heritage, and cultural heritage, which truly shows its pluralist identity based on being inclusive. It was through these experiences that Turkey has undertaken the co-chairmanship of the Alliance of Civilizations together with Spain under the auspices of the United Nations. This initiative has shown that different cultures and civilizations do not have to be in conflict with each other, but that they can live together, coexist together within a constructive competition. And so far, About 100 countries and institutions have become part of the alliance, and more are on the way. And I think that this alliance is important for reinforcing the message of an alliance of civilization as opposed to a clash of civilization. And we hope that this is going to make our world a more livable place. The fourth pillar of the global order is universal norms of law. Right to life, human dignity, human rights, freedom of expression and belief, privacy, and assurances of a safe life are all important basic principles that are shared by humanity. These norms are the basic tenets of our understanding of a human being, and they also make up the building blocks of a global justice and legal system. Basic documents such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights have made these norms binding on all countries and societies. But we must also underline one fact here, and that is that it is good to have the documents, of course, but the important thing is to make sure that what's in those documents are practiced. If you have the text and you don't have the practice, that, of course, is not really of any use to us. In our country, we say, and this is going to be interpreted, so it's a saying, and we say that you cannot feel the sweet taste of honey in your mouth just by speaking the name of honey. You have to eat the honey to taste the taste. So the documents are wonderful. You read them and they read well. But to have a different practice for the stronger ones as opposed to the weaker ones, then do those texts benefit the weaker ones? No. So that's why we, as all of mankind, have to work towards a world where the strong one is not seen to be just in cases when he is not. That's not the kind of world we're looking for. If the strong one is not right, then they too should face the consequences of not being right. That's the kind of world that we should all be aspiring at. Isn't this what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights wants? Or envisions, rather. But in practice, of course, it's important to do this. There are many decisions that the United Nations takes, but they cannot really be imposed, and that is where the problem is. What's important is that once the decisions are taken, they should be implemented, and if that comes to pass, then trust in the United Nations will grow. So that's where the problem is. Trust. It's a trust issue, which is something that we have to work on. The laws, the norms in law are important to the extent that they find life and they're implemented in real life. And the legal systems therefore need instruments to ensure that these universal principles are practiced, and it is our common responsibility to make sure that these instruments, these institutions are built. Turkey is a country which aims to solve its problems within an understanding of law and democracy, and this is how we have determined our targets. This is our aim. I don't mean to say that we have fully accomplished all this. We have our own issues, our own problems too, but this is our goal. We are working towards that goal as well. In the very near past, we initiated a democratic outreach program, which is in fact a part of this effort, because We believe that the rule of law, a state respecting the rule of law, it takes that characteristic as the basis in trying to solve its problems, democratic problems, problems with human rights. This is what we are trying to do now with all the steps we're taking. We are trying to take the right steps based on justice and rights, and those steps are supported by our society, our people. And we're also very pleased with the overall reception of these efforts by the international community. We aim to continue to move forward in our process of democratic outreach, and we aim to successful move forward in this direction and develop our efforts. I have mentioned here principles which are very important for the building of a new global order based on justice, peace and trust. As the world globalizes, it's important that we convert the threats into opportunity. In fact, as we enter the 21st century, the establishment of global peace was the important word, understanding in the world, and of course, and that includes fighting against terrorism and having international cooperation, and this was also what the United States has been trying to achieve. And this goal has been a goal that we have always been trying to achieve, and Turkey has been one of the first countries to lend its support to the United States, even immediately after the events of 9/11, because we are against any kind of terrorism, no matter where it takes place, because we in our country have been fighting against terrorism for many years, and we understand what it means to suffer from terrorism. In other words, we have had similar experiences. I hope I have been able to explain this. We have another saying in Turkish, which is to say that someone who falls off the roof understands another who falls off the roof. This is a Nasrettin Hoca anecdote. Nasrettin Hoca falls off the roof and breaks his leg, and they start looking for a doctor. Nasrettin Hoca says, "Don't look for a doctor. Find me someone who has fallen off the roof before. He will be the experienced one. He'll know what I need."
Şimdi gerçekten tabii bunlar bazı gerçekleri ortaya koyuyor.
I say this in a way of trying to explain some realities. The process of globalization that is ongoing needs a new institutional and legal framework. We need to have institutions which have a sound basis and which have a high vision, and they will provide the opportunity to convert problems and threats into opportunities. And it will be important that we determine these principles and bring them to fruition. And Turkey is becoming a very effective country in its region in light of this global vision. Our goal is to continue to try and contribute to peace and stability in Turkey, in our region, of course, but also in the world. And within this framework, I also would like to say a few words about our relations with our neighbors, and I would also like to say a few words about regional issues. With Greece, we have been working for more than 10 years now to improve the good environments, good relations that we have been establishing with Greece. And the same thing is true, the same constructive approach is true in our relations with Bulgaria as well. With Bulgaria, with Romania, we are now allies in NATO. In the same way, we have very good relations with the Ukraine and other littoral states of the Black Sea. Russia has become Turkey's largest trading partner. I said this earlier. This cooperation extends from energy to contracting services. We have very good cooperation with Russia. The Caucasus lies to the south of Russia and the east of Turkey, and as a result of the conflict that began in summer of 2008, we have all been reminded of the fact that these frozen conflicts have the potential to convert themselves into major conflict. And one of the most important reasons for these problems has been the lack of confidence, trust. And to overcome this problem, there has been a need at a regional level to create dialogue. And in this area, Turkey has taken upon itself an initiative and has suggested the establishment of a Caucasus Stability and Cooperation Platform. 5 countries are within this initiative: Russian Federation, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. And these 5 countries, they are trying to bring this region bring peace to this region, and we hope that we will succeed in this area, and our work is ongoing in this regard. I believe that a comprehensive solution to all these problems will also be possible. Will also help solve the problems between Azerbaijan and Armenia, which have been a fact of life for many years. It will also help contribute to resolve issues between Turkey, Armenia, and Russia and Georgia. So, because all of these problems at the end of the day have interactions, or at least effects on each other, and it is possible to solve these problems, because when you talk to these countries, we see that there is a possibility to establish dialogue on these issues, and that's why we've established a platform. For example, the discussions between Azerbaijan and Armenia today, as compared to the previous decades, is moving forward with unprecedented motivation. There is a lot of work that is being done now, which was not done before. And same thing with the Russian Federation, the US and France within the context of the Minsk Group. Between Turkey and Armenia, there are steps that are being taken with the mediation of Switzerland. And those steps that we take forward have really taken us to a very important position. And if we don't see prejudice or some domestic political considerations at play, I believe that the preparations for an agreement which has been initialed between Turkey and Armenia could be taken to parliaments to be ratified, and we hope to take those steps forward by the 10th and 11th of next month. Of course, the whole thing comes down to domestic political considerations as well. People consider those considerations, but there's always that risk. There are always risks. For example, this democratic outreach program constitutes a risk for us. I've said this in Turkey, I'll say this here. But I studied economics, and my teacher used to say that, my professor used to say that economics is a risk. And then in politics, I experienced the fact that politics is about taking risk. But life is full of risks, and so there is always some risk-taking involved in life, and the same thing is true in politics. Sometimes you're in prison, sometimes you will be toppled and you won't be in power anymore. Though if those things don't happen to you, you're not really in politics. They happen, and this is how we see it. It happens. Why was I in prison? Because I recited a poem. And that's why I was in prison. And the poem that I recited was written by one of the leading poets in Turkey at the time of the foundation of the Turkish Republic. And in fact, the poem is also can be found in the books published by the Ministry of National Education. So that was the poem I recited, and then I was in prison. Well, wonderful, and there I was in prison. It was thought, and it's wonderful to have been imprisoned for this reason, to have tried to disseminate ideas. It doesn't say that I stole or I was involved in fraud, or that wasn't the reason why I was imprisoned. It was because I recited a poem. Do the people forgive this kind of action? No. Because 16 months after we established our political party, we won 65% of the Turkish parliament, and that was through the votes of the people. That, I think, is the important message here, and that is what is so great about democracy. And this is how we will continue to work and move forward. We need to take those risks. As for the Caucasus and the comprehensive solution of the problems in the Caucasus, we believe that there are a lot of new political dynamics that could be established. We have close cultural and historic ties with Azerbaijan as well in the region, and Azerbaijan is a key country in the region, and we have very good relations with Azerbaijan in all areas. Our relations, in the same way with Georgia, is also very good. The world public opinion has been closely following the developments between Turkey and Armenia, and there's a lot of expectation as to what is going to take place, and there are positive steps that are being taken in this regard. But in my opinion, the Armenian president should not be hesitant about whether or not coming to the Turkey-Armenia football match in Turkey. Our president, Mr. Gül, went to watch the game, Turkey-Armenia match in Armenia, and I think that's the answer. If when I'm asked this question, I think the answer is to do what our president has done. So it's important that we can overcome prejudice. If there is reciprocity in some way, if the Turkish president can easily go to Armenia to watch the game there, and then it should be just as easy and simple for the Armenian president to come to Turkey to watch the game in Turkey. I think that asking for certain conditions to be met to decide to come is not the right way to move forward in international politics anymore. Our relations, bilateral relations, neighborly relations with Armenia will be conducted within mutual respect. We have, for example, at the moment, 40,000 Armenian citizens in Turkey who are illegal, who don't have visas, but we're not sending them back. And if they're here for a reason. They're in Turkey for a reason. They live in Turkey. And I think that it's important to take note of these facts. My dear friends, developments in Iraq, they are very important for Turkey as well. And when the problems between Iraq and Syria, Turkey played a very active role. In our relations with Iraq, we have a high-level strategic consultative group which we formed. And we have every year with Iraq a meeting at the prime ministerial level, and then 3 meetings every year at ministerial level. This is how the consultation system works. We would like to see things go for the better in Iraq soon, because otherwise they could find themselves in a position where they are beginning to export terrorism. So to make sure that that doesn't happen, it's important that territorial integrity of Iraq is protected, and relations between Iraq and Syria must be once again a peaceful relationship, and peace must reign in the region, and for that to happen, countries must be in solidarity with each other. Last week there was a meeting in Istanbul, And that meeting has taken our relations with Iraq from just being a passive neighbor to being a very active neighbor with active friendship and cooperation. We also have a long-standing history with Iran. We have good neighborly relations with Iran, and we aim to protect those good neighborly relations, and we would like to continue to develop our relations based on mutual benefit. We are also working to try and make sure that Iran becomes more transparent and more open to cooperation with respect to its nuclear program, which is creating a cause for concern within the international community. And we see diplomacy and other peaceful efforts and means as being the only solution to try and overcome this difficulty, these issues. And we're very pleased to see that the international community too agrees with this approach, a peaceful approach based on diplomacy. Our relations with Syria are also very important, and as I said before, we intermediated 5 rounds of discussions between Israel and Syria to help solve the problems between the two countries, but these talks were stopped because of what happened in Gaza. But we hope that these rounds will resume. We think that it's necessary that it resumes, and the problems between Israel and Syria must be overcome, and I think that will also help contribute to peace in the region. In the same way, there were problems in Lebanon, and we were involved in trying to help overcome those problems, and with respect to finding a solution in that regard too, we put in our best efforts, and things are now there such that the government is about to be established in Lebanon. We also believe, on the other hand, that the resources in the Middle East should not be spent on armament and armed struggle, but that they should be set aside for peace and happiness of the people in the region. At the moment, the world, if the world were to spend the money it's spending for armament, does the world spend that kind of money for peace, for education, for health in poor countries, or for climate change or environment or the environment? The answer to those questions, unfortunately, is no. That is not the case. Developed countries do not have such concerns, and developing countries cannot really take this up to a very great extent. And in our discussions, this is what we have been saying, and I continue to bring these issues up in my discussions. Now, Afghanistan and Pakistan, we see problems there too, and no solution on the horizon. There too, there's a lot of money being spent on arms. There's perhaps no limit to the amount of money spent on arms. And same is true in Iraq. Perhaps the amount of expenditure in Iraq could have had a hand in the financial problems encountered here in the United States. And these are all well known. How much money is spent? I don't know exactly how much money is spent, but I think we all know that a lot of money has been spent. But to what result? What happened was the infrastructure, the superstructures in Iraq have collapsed completely. History has collapsed there. And millions of people have died. It's a country rich in history, rich in civilization, but it now stands in need of a hand to be extended to it for help. We heard President Obama address the General Assembly today, and he said that the American troops will be leaving Iraq by the end of 2011. They will all be, as far as I could follow them, all troops will be leaving Iraq by then. But what happens after that? How many decades will it take
o bildiğimiz Irak olabilir.
Iraq to be the Iraq that
Acaba bundan
we
sonra
used to know.
hangi şekilde?
How will problems be resolved?
İşte bütün bunlar.
So all of these issues are things that we have to focus on.
Dünyanın farklı ülkelerinde, gidelim Afrika ülkelerinde.
In different countries in the world, for example, you go to Africa, and there are a number of issues in African countries too. When one doesn't go and visit those places, we think that things are more or less the same in many parts of the world, whereas that is not the case. When one goes and visits those countries, those places, one, I think, should feel very ashamed, very embarrassed, because in our civilization, understanding of civilization, in the alliance of civilization, we are a part of our understanding of the human being, of mankind, is that we love those who are created because of the Creator. It doesn't matter what religion the human being, the person comes from, what race, it doesn't matter. We love all men because they're all created by God. And any other approach is not in line with our civilization, with our understanding of life. When terrorism was very much under discussion internationally, there was a lot of talk about Islamic terrorism. That was that kind of characterization, which was wrong, because Islam never accepts or supports terrorism. The word Islam, the meaning of the word Islam, is peace. It is a religion which believes in peace. It is a civilization which has been created with that understanding. No monotheistic religion would allow killing of people. You wouldn't see that in Christianity. You wouldn't see it in Judaism. That it just simply doesn't allow it. If someone from one religion is committing such a crime, is killing, then it's that person's action, but it is not. It should not be seen as being a character of that religion. These are the kinds of things we're talking about in the Alliance of Civilizations. This is what we are discussing, and we are trying to help contribute to world peace and trying to take steps in that regard. We are trying to help overcome problems between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and we have organized some trilateral summits between Turkey, Afghanistan and Pakistan. The third such summit took place, and we continue to work in that format. There's also, ladies and gentlemen, Turkey's accession process to the European Union. And we have, in that process, something quite peculiar. 1959 was when we started our discussions with Europe, and we're in 2009. 60 years have passed, and there is no other country which has had to wait for that long. When I look at the other members and people or other countries who have become members, and there is no other country in this situation. But there are unfortunately many weak pretexts, excuses which are being used to put some obstacles. But we still continue to do our work, and we tell the Europeans that if they're going to take Turkey a member, they should go ahead and do this, but not with new rules after we started the process, because the game has started. The ball is in court, and then they're trying to change the rules after the ball is in court. This can't be, because the EU has its own rules. They have their acquis, what is called the acquis, which is the body of their rules, but then they come up with different rules, and when we say that this is not right, they say, well, this is the way it is, and it's very difficult to really understand. And some agree with us, but even if one doesn't agree with us, then we have a problem. There's, for example, the issue with energy now. Turkey is a transit country in the Nabucco project, where the most important part of Nabucco, everything is ready, signatures are put on paper, but there is still the problem with opening the energy chapter in Turkey's accession to the EU because the Greek Cypriots do not agree to allow that. How did the Greek Cypriots become a member of the EU? I'll tell you how. They came to us and they said, the Europeans said to us that there will be this referendum, and they said, if you get a yes vote from the Turkish Cypriots in the north for the plan, for the Annan plan in the referendum, we will then be involved as guarantors and we will do our best to help resolve the issue. And then in the end, 65% of the people in the north said yes to the plan in the referendum. This was on the 24th of April 2004. And a week later, a week after that date, Cyprus was going to become a member of the EU. And on the Greek Cypriot side, the referendum was turned down by 75%, but interestingly enough, the Greek Cypriots became a member of the EU a week later. So it's hard to understand how this is coming about. This is where the problem is. So what it says in the acquis, in the EU law, is different. Just like I said earlier to you about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there are things written in documents, but the practice doesn't reflect what's on paper. So then, of course, you have a problem. And this has led to a diminishing of trust by the Turkish people to the EU. At about that time, when we had public opinion polls conducted in Turkey, 75% of the Turkish people were in favor of joining the EU. That 75% went down to 65%, and now it's less than 50%. And if we ask the people whether they believe the EU is going to take Turkey as a member, 25% believe it only. So that's where we stand today.
Bizde bir zamanlar şarkı mıydı, türkü müydü bilmiyorum ama adaletin bu mu dünya diye.
There used to be a song in Turkey where it was said, "Is this the justice in the world?" And this is this shouldn't be justice in the world. These were lyrics to a song, and we do want to see full membership. Of course, some members of the EU are coming up with some alternatives, such as a privileged partnership, which is an alternative to full membership. France is one of those countries. We hope that this is not going to happen. This is not right either. This is not proper, because there was never ever a talk of such different alternatives before. They all came about later on. This was not something that we had ever discussed when we first started on this path. There was no such different types of association or membership, but there are all these different formula being discussed now. But it doesn't matter. We keep moving forward. And we will continue until we are clearly told that the EU will not accept Turkey as a member. So our determination in this regard will continue, and because we can continue with the same criteria, the EU political criteria, we just call them the Ankara criteria, and we will continue. And for the commercial economic criteria, we'll call them the Istanbul criteria, and we'll keep moving forward. So we are determined to do what is required of membership, and we will continue to work in this regard. And for the solution of the Cyprus problem, the United Nations is the proper platform for the solution of this problem. We do not see any alternative to that. Our relations with the United States, which is a friendly and ally country, is important. We have common interests with the United States, and there's a lot of work that is going on in our region and beyond. We work together with the United States in those areas, and we see a lot of cooperation, especially on regional issues, the Middle East, Caucasus, the Balkans, Central Asia. There is a vast geography where we're working together to achieve peace, stability, and prosperity. And our cooperation has a very determining effect on the achieving these goals. In the past, we jointly took part in many international peacekeeping operations in Korea, Somalia, and Kosovo. Our relations and cooperation has deepened and diversified in the aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union and the regional problems and asymmetrical threats and ethnic conflict which emerged as a result. Our two countries are working in close collaboration with each other in trying to overcome problems which prevent political, economic, and cultural development in international affairs. President of the United States, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama, visited Turkey in April, and that visit has once again reconfirmed at the highest level the mutual trust and cooperation between the two countries. President Obama, during his visit in Turkey, characterized Turkey and Turkey-US relations as a model partnership. That was a very important characterization. It takes our relationship to a point beyond the strategic partnership that exists between our two countries. As cooperation between Turkey and the United States grows and develops, the synergy that comes about is going to, in my opinion, contribute not just to mutual interests, but it will also have contributions to regional and global stability. Distinguished guests, Turkey has a strong economy, a dynamic population, and has strong ties, historic ties with the regional countries, and is therefore a very important balancing factor in its region. As of the end of 2008, Turkey has a GDP of $742 billion, which makes it the 17th largest economy in the world and 6th largest economy in Europe. Today, despite the financial crisis, the economic crisis, Turkey still maintains its good position, is one of the few countries which is least affected by the crisis. I hope that as the distance between national, regional and global problems becomes shorter and shorter and closer, we can base or prepare and build a world which is based on justice, peace and equality, based on respect and trust. We can make the 21st century a century of peace, not war, a century of trust, not fear, a century of justice, not injustice, a century of order and not a century of terrorism, a century of prosperity and not a century of poverty. It is our common responsibility and historic responsibility, no matter what religion or nationality will come from, to help contribute to establishing just that kind of a world. With these thoughts in mind, I would like to end my words here, and I would like to greet you with respect. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening to me.
Very good. Thank you very much, Prime Minister Erdogan. He has graciously agreed to take a few questions from Princeton students who are in the audience. I would like to ask students who are interested in asking a question to raise their hand. What we'll do is I'll take 3 questions at a time. They'll be translated, and then the Prime Minister will answer them together. If you want to ask a question, please keep it fairly brief, and please make it a question, not a comment. So, which students in the audience would like to ask a question? Yes? think there's a...
I'm not a student. May I ask a question?
We were restricting it to students, so sorry. Yeah. Are there students in the audience who'd like to ask a question? Yes. Please say your name first.
Javier Maciz. Hello, sir. How would you like to address the really recent issue of water under this new proposition that you were talking about earlier?
Thank you very much. Let's take another couple questions. And okay, over here. Do we have a microphone over on this side of the room? Why don't we go to the young woman in the back row?
Prime Minister, your government recently introduced a controversial Kurdish initiative which calls for greater political and cultural rights for Turkey's Kurdish minority. And this contrasts with Turkey's traditional policy towards the conflict, which has been more military-led and often relied on heavy-handed and even oppressive measures against the Kurdish minority. Does your government's opting for a political solution recognize that the military solution has been unsuccessful, and what hurdles do you anticipate to face in trying to make this initiative a success?
Okay, thank you. Let's take one more question right here.
Öncelikle hoş geldiniz. Question for the Prime Minister. I want to know about his personal global leadership. We've heard a lot about Turkey and its rising confidence today. What about the Prime Minister's personal leadership? And the way he spoke today, I almost imagine that President Obama could give the same type of talk about the global scope. What does he personally think of the future? I recently heard he's not going to be running for re-election. What is he hoping to do towards bringing his own global leadership to a larger audience?
Thank you very much.
Öncelikle su konusunda
Now, on water, first of all,
düşüncelerimi ifade edeyim.
I will try to communicate my thoughts to you.
Dünyanın şu anda en önemli sorunu
The most important problem in the world today is probably water.
Kişi başına yıllık su ihtiyacı
Per capita requirement for water annually is 10,000 cubic meters.
Şu anda Türkiye olarak
In Turkey,
örneğin bizim kaynaklarımızı tam devreye
if we
sokabilirsek
were to utilize all of our resources, we would
3000
get
metreküp civarında
about
kişi başına
3,000 cubic
temin
meters
edebileceğimiz su.
water,
Şu
which
anda
we would be
vardığımız
making
nokta
available
2000
per capita. At present, it's 2,000, but we could go up to
Ama bazıları
3,000.
örneğin
But then
Türkiye'yi su zengini zannederler.
there's still a
Aslında
lot of way
değil.
to go. Many
Tabii
think
üç
that
tarafının
Turkey is
denizle
water
kaplı
rich,
olması
but
su
that's not
zengini
really
olduğumuz anlamına
the case. It
gelmez.
doesn't mean that having water on your
Tabii
three sides,
dünya
on
bu
the
konuda
three
şu
sides
an
of
ne
the
yapıyor?
country
Bir
makes you
deniz
water rich.
suyundan içme suyu
Of course, there's all
veya
the efforts
kullanma suyu
for
üretiyor.
desalination to use
Bir
seawater.
diğeri de recycle
And there's
yoluyla
also the recycling of water
kullanılmış suyu tekrar
to make use of
kullanma
water
noktasına
again.
getiriyor ama içme değil tabii.
But of course that's not
Ve bu
potable
konuda da
water.
7 kez
And
burada recycle yapabildiklerini söylüyor benim danışmanlarım.
my
bu noktada.
advisors tell me that it's possible to recycle
Tabii
7
iklim
times.
değişikliğiyle bir defa çok
With
ciddi bir
climate
buharlaşma
change, there is also a major
konusunda
issue
söz
with
konusu.
evaporation,
Buna yönelik tedbirler
and it's necessary
geliştirilmesi, alınması
to take
gerekiyor.
some steps
Ve burada da
to
özellikle bizim
help prevent the consequences
insanlar
of that.
olarak
And as
israftan kaçınmamız bana göre
people,
en
of course,
önemli
I think one of the
geri
most
dönüş.
important things that
Bunu
we can
başarmamız
do
lazım.
is to conserve our water. In other words, that will also
Örneğin
help
bizim ülkemizde
with
hala içme suyuyla tarla sulanır.
water. For example, in my country, people use
Buna
drinking
karşı
water to
mücadele veriyoruz.
irrigate land,
Verdiğimiz bu
and we've
mücadelede
been
de
fighting
tabii
against
ki
that.
hemen
And
bir karşı
whenever, of course, you try to do something like that, people do not like the idea and they oppose it. We are working on irrigation systems. For example, we're covering all the irrigation arcs so that we can prevent evaporation and we can prevent or at least minimize loss of water and leakage of water. And these efforts must go hand in hand in different countries. There's got to be some cooperation. So recycling and taking measures vis-à-vis evaporation. And third, making good proper planning with respect to potable water and unpotable water, and of course fourth, a costly alternative but still desalination and use of seawater. These are, as far as I know, the ways out, if you will. I don't know, I may not know all of them, but those who are experts will tell us, I'm sure will at least help us move forward in that area. Second question about the Kurdish rights and this democratic outreach, this program, this outreach that we have announced is not solely based on the Kurdish issue. It's not a step that is only for the Kurdish issue. When we established our political party, we had in our political party program mention of this problem. You can call it different things. You can call it the Southeast problem, the Kurdish issue. There are different names you can use to explain it, but where we are today with this democratic outreach is not just a question or an effort of the problems of our Kurdish citizens, because we have more than 130 ethnicities in Turkey. They all have their different issues. The biggest issue or the biggest thing that we would like to tackle is terrorism, and there's also problems that our Alawite citizens have. We have already had 5 workshops so that we can move forward in trying to help resolve their issues. There are also issues or problems that the minorities would like to be addressed. A few weeks ago, I met with minority representatives in Turkey, with the representatives of the religious groups, and they communicated to us some of their problems, and we need to take some steps in trying to overcome their problems. There's also a problem with unemployment, which is something that we should be focusing on as well. So it is a program which envisions in ways to help resolve a number of issues. The Kurdish issue is one of them, but there are others as well. And we will be very determined in our approach in trying to overcome these problems. For example, when we came to government, there was a lot of discussion about why there is no Kurdish broadcast on state television, state-run television. We took this up immediately, and now we have one state-run channel, which is allocated for Kurdish broadcasts. It's called TRT6, and it broadcasts in Kurdish language 24 hours a day. In the very beginning, people reacted to it, some people, but then nothing has happened. So it can happen. We have on billboards announcements in Kurdish. This was not possible in the past. In the past, it wasn't possible, for example, if you were to go to prison to see your mother in prison, you couldn't talk to her in Kurdish. But those are the kinds of things that you can do now. There's also the language courses, which are now available, which people can open courses to teach languages so that people can improve their native language. But these are the kinds of steps that have been taken. There was some initial reaction to some of this. There was also requests. There were also requests for the state to take these efforts forward. For example, there's now also a discussion of having departments in universities in Kurdish language. These are the kinds of things that are being discussed, or there's also some progress in some of these areas. But of course, there are some short-term, mid-term, and longer-term efforts that we have to take into consideration within the framework of this democratic outreach. We can't do it all at once. It's just not possible. We have to take our time in trying to understand the effects and in trying to get people to understand where we're going. As far as leadership, global leadership,
dünyada liderler olarak aramızda görüşüyoruz. Hangi bölgede
as global leaders, we talk to each other. We talk to each other as to who can be more effective in what region, and we have to work hand in hand so that wherever we can be of help, all of us as global leaders can use their leadership and skill to help contribute to a solution. For example, the G20. We will be meeting in the G20 format.
Zirvesini biz sadece bir ekonomik zirve olarak düşünmüyoruz.
We do not see the G20 as simply an economic summit. As Turkey, we think that security is a part of this climate change. It should be a part of it. Health, education should be a part of it. We believe that it's important that the summit takes those issues up as well. G20 is not a very small group. It makes up 80% of the world, and therefore it could be quite encompassing, and therefore it also has a lot of responsibility as well, of course.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Erdogan. We're delighted. And thank you also, President Tobin. Could you please remain seated while the Prime Minister leaves the stage? Thank you.
Bye-bye.